The Human Self and Iblees. Translation of Iblees O Adam. Translated and edited. Dr. Ajaz Rasool, UK. The Quranic Concept of Satan and Perspective on Human Desires, Emotions, Intellect and Wahi. Author. Ghulam Ahmad Parwez. 3. Iblees. According to the law of evolution, strength and eminence can only be achieved by a hand-to-hand struggle with confrontational and hostile forces. Those species which do not have to challenge an unfavorable environment and circumstances cannot progress forward. Life is a continuous flowing stream, but if there is no turbulence from stones in its path, then its silent steady flow will gradually become stagnant, and this flowing stream will become a pool or pond of inertia and dormancy. The music hidden within the strings of a guitar can never be awakened without strumming. The shine and glitter in the mirror of a sword can never be created until the time that it is sharpened and polished on a stone. Sparks of fire cannot be produced from stones without rubbing these together. The potential for reflection can never be produced in a mirror until there is a silver coating on its back. In the same way, the ego craves someone other than itself in order for its emergence, strengthening and ascension. If the ego does not confront and compete with someone other than itself, then the dynamism of the universe will become cold. The gleaming colors of the arena of life will become dull, and this world of color and fragrance will again become an unfinished pot of clay. The heat of the blood circulating in the universe owes itself solely to the manifestation of the ego's desire to display itself and its lust for struggle. Man was born, and all the things of the heavenly universe were made available for his use. And he has subjected to you, as from him, all that is in the heavens and on earth. Behold, in that are signs indeed for those who reflect. 45:13. 3.1 Strengthening of the human self. In order to extract work from these forces, he had to bring his physical and intellectual abilities into use to the maximum. But as we have seen earlier, man is not merely the name for these physical and intellectual powers. There is within him, other than this, another entity which has been termed divine Ruh. Energy. This is what is known as man's ego I. When man says I, then by this is not meant his physical form, but is something else beyond this. This I, or ego, is his self, and the strengthening and development of this self is the accomplishment of the eminence of being human. It was a demand for the strengthening and growth of the self that there should also be some force confronting it, and through facing and challenging this, dynamism would be created in its potential. Iblees is the name of this very force. 3.2 The essence of Iblees. The Malaika prostrated before man. Iblees stood up in confrontation. Obedience, submission to commands, and compliance are traits of the Malaika. Rebellion, transgression, sinfulness and rejection, this is the essence of Iblees. Reflect on the verses of the story of Adam, and this difference will become distinctly clear. At the time of the creation of Adam, the Malaika also submitted an objection. Will you place therein one who would make mischief therein and shed blood, while we always remain busy in your tasbih and takdees? 2:30. A similar kind of objection was also put forward by Iblees. I am better than he. You did create me from fire and him from clay. 7:12. When the reality was made clear to the Malaika, then their agreeable nature bowed its head. They stated, O Allah, our doubt was based on our lack of knowledge. They said, exalted are you. Of knowledge we have none save what you have taught us. Indeed, it is you who is all-knowing, all-wise. 2:32. But when the reality became unveiled in front of Iblees, what did he do? He did not bow. He rebelled and chose arrogance, and was of those who became kafirin. 2:34. After this, he, Iblees, said, see you, This is the one whom you have honored above me. Opening parenthesis. 1762. If this is to be the verdict, then I am not prepared to accept it. Wherever the Quran has repeated the story of the total obedience of the Malaika's prostration at a number of places, it has also narrated the story of the rebelliousness and transgression of Iblees' arrogance at a number of places, e.g. 15, 30-33, 38, 73-76. 3.3 What is Iblees? This fact should be comprehended right now at this point, that Iblees does not exist as a separate entity outside of man. This is in fact the name of a trait within man himself. There are three fundamental elements in man. 1. Emotions. 2. Intellect. 3. Human personality or self. Intellect is the name of that power which provides the means and resources for the accomplishment of every desire, every intention, and every decision of man, and seeks reasons to justify these decisions as being legitimate. Hence, intellect is in itself neither good nor evil. Human emotions are that motivational drive through which human desires are both created, and which also initiates that force within man through which his decisions are brought to fruition. Hence, emotions are also neither good nor evil in themselves. The force controlling the intellect and emotions is called the human self. If the human self is weak, then his emotions become the cause for the fulfillment of his desires, which are at the animalistic level, and his intellect becomes the concubine of these emotions. But if the human self is strengthened, then both the emotions and the intellect remain within its control. And the human self strengthens through obedience of the permanent values bestowed via wahi. This means that the situation is this, that when human emotions remain under the obedience of the intellect and the intellect follows the commands of wahi, then the outcome of both the emotions and intellect is care, goodness. But when these adopt rebellion against the teaching of wahi, then its consequence is one of shar, evil. His rebellious emotions and unbridled intellect are defined using the terms shaitan or Iblees. Iblees is within man himself, not anywhere outside of him. Since this point is a very important and fundamental one, it is therefore reiterated in greater detail. As we have seen earlier, one level of human life is that which is called the animalistic life, or his physical life. At this level his needs are the same as those which are the instinctive needs of animals, i.e., preservation of the self and the demands of procreation and their related issues. These demands remain operational automatically within man. The other thing which is in man is intellect. One task of the intellect is that whatever information the senses communicate to him, it should make sense of these results by processing them, and in this way carry out an objective study of every issue. But its second task is that whatever the human emotions desire, it should consider arrangements to provide it. From this respect, the intellect is the servant of the emotions. Its task is that whatever the emotions tell it, it should keep doing this, and also to keep providing reasons for its justification. Indeed, give legitimacy for it. The third thing within man is that I by which human life is in fact defined. The task of this I is that it should formulate correct decisions and cause the intellect to work according to these decisions. If this I is weak, then all the decisions of man will be according to his emotions, and the level of his life will not be able to progress beyond that of the animalistic life. But if his I is not weak, then his decisions will be made separately from the emotions, and it is these decisions which will be termed as human decisions. Under a special system, shaped in the light of wahi, this I attains so much strength that it can make decisions itself in every matter. These decisions are such that on the one hand all the physical needs of life continue to be suitably fulfilled through these and on the other hand strengthening of the self keeps enhancing to an ever greater extent. When the intellect functions under the obedience of human emotions, then it is called rebellious intellect or unbridled knowledge, and its name is Iblees. When this same intellect functions under wahi, then it becomes precise humanity. The tussle which takes place between unbridled intellect and the needs of humanity is called an Ibleesi struggle. This is the struggle between good and evil. As a consequence of this struggle, the human self keeps becoming strengthened and continually overcomes the unbridled intellect. After the confrontation with one's own unbridled intellect, confrontation with the unbridled intellect of other individuals also takes place. These are those hurdles which are an obstruction in the path of the human self, but it is through their very severity and intensity that resilience is created in the self. The tougher that the metal shell of a bomb is, which serves as a resistance to the explosive inside it, the proportionately greater the force of its explosive will be. As far as this aspect of the intellect is concerned, in which it draws conclusions from the data provided to it via the senses, and after deliberating on the various aspects of some issue provides reasoning and logic, the Quran has accorded this knowledge and intellect a very lofty status. 3.4 Exaltation of knowledge and intellect. We have seen in the story of Adam that it was knowledge itself that was that jewel on the basis of which Adam was declared to be deserving of prostration by the Malaika. Keep turning over the radiant pages of the Quran and you will see from the beginning to the end how intellect and vision, rationality and pragmatism, knowledge and wisdom are declared to be a reason for pride, and a cause for respect and dignity. Indeed, it is to the human intellect that the Quran addresses itself. Those possessing wisdom and vision, insight and foresight, intellectuals of the highest order, are according to the Quran deserving of the highest stature of humanity. Contrary to this, those who do not make use of intellect and reasoning are the worst of creations. For the worst of beasts in the sight of Allah are the deaf and the dumb, those who do not use intellect. 8:22. There are numerous verses of this kind in the Quran in which intellect and reasoning is declared to be the reason for the eminence of humanity. But together with this it has also informed us that when knowledge and intellect functions under the control of human emotions, then the consequence of this is nothing but ruin and destruction. After mentioning those who opposed the invitation of Rasulullah, it compares them with similar former nations and states. And surely we had established them firmly, former nations, with power, control and strength, greater than even you, and we had given them faculties of hearing, sight, heart and intellect. But of no profit to them were their faculties of hearing, sight, heart and intellect when they went on rejecting the signs of Allah. And they were completely encircled by that which they used to mock at. 46:26. 3.5 Destructions from unbridled knowledge. Ponder this, that whatever degree of chaos and bloodshed, injustice and tyranny there is in the world, the root cause of all of this is that man has left his knowledge and intellect unbridled and rebellious, and has not kept it under the obeisance of the laws of a being higher and superior than himself. This is what is called a system of Iblees, in which every individual, Jamaat, or nation which can deceive others, i.e., that which possesses greater knowledge and intellect than that of others and exploits it for their own interests, is extremely successful. When knowledge is not confined within the shores of divine wahi, then it becomes a roaring, tumultuous river against whose swirling waters justice, equality, ethics, civilization and order become uprooted and continue to drift away. An overpowering flood, a storm of immense proportions, a demonic, energetic tornado, a fireball engulfing the world, i.e., Iblees. Just reflect for a moment with what style and appeal the Quran has narrated the fierceness and rebelliousness of this unchecked force so that its truth becomes clearly evident to the insightful vision. Iblees is told to go. Get out from here. You are condemned, cursed, you are rejected, you are deprived of respect and dignity for all times. This kind of warning from the divine court was no less than causing the body to quake, but in response there is no expression of any sorrow and apology, or shame and regret from Iblees. He states that Iblees said, "O my Rabb, give me then respite till the day of resurrection." 15:36. 3.6 The challenge. And when this request is accepted, he states, Iblees said, "O my Rabb, because you have put me in the wrong, I will make fair seeming to them on the earth, and I will put them all in the wrong." 15:39. At another place it is stated that when he is asked, "Why did you not prostrate before Adam?" in reply he stated, Iblees, said, "Shall I bow down to one whom you did create from clay?" 17:61. Following this it is stated, he said, "See you, this is the one whom you have honored above me. If you will but respite me to the day of judgment, I will surely bring his descendants under my sway, all but a few." 17:62. In Surah Sa'd is said that when Iblees was given respite, he stated, Iblees said, "Then, I swear, by your power, I will put them all in the wrong." 38:82. Consider here the vow of Iblees, O Master of the earth and the heavens. I swear by the power and glamour of you. I swear by the supremacy and authority of you. I swear by the control and reign of you, I will not leave them until I have destroyed them, I will leave them misguided. Since Iblees is the manifestation of an unbridled force, hence he has also taken the vow of power and authority, and control and supremacy of Allah. 3.7 Another aspect of Ibleesiyat. Then also note that when Adam realized his error, he immediately acknowledged it and stated, Our Rabb, we have wronged our own selves. 7:23. In other words, he held himself responsible for his own error and lowered his eyes with regret. This is why it was stated that the consequence of this conduct of yours is that you will be able to reform yourself. This is why the doors of repentance have been opened for you. But contrary to this, when Iblees was questioned, "Why did you commit sin?" he responded, "When did I commit an error? You have put me in the wrong." 15:39. You misguided me, I am not responsible for my error. I am just helpless, it is you who causes everything to happen. In reply to this it was stated that the consequence of this mentality of yours is that you will never be able to reform yourself. The individual who does not even hold himself responsible for his own mistake, how can he rectify himself? Hence, the doors of reformation cannot open for you. For your share there is hopelessness forever. Opening parenthesis. The literal meaning of Iblees is hopelessness. You have seen what a great reality is contained in this comparison. On the one hand, the apparently insoluble problem of takdir has been solved in this beautiful and logical way, and on the other hand the possibility of reformation after the commission of a crime has also been clarified. The possibility of reformation is for the one who accepts his responsibility and then begins to tread on the correct path for recovery. The one who does not even accept his own responsibility and remains obstinate in his belief, how can he reform himself? Just reflect on how many devastations and upheavals appear in the world which occur solely on this basis, that despite realizing his error man does not acknowledge it, and instead remains entrenched in his obstinacy and transgression due to a sense of false pride of his self, and more or less attempts to prove himself to be in the right by producing a justification for his error. This arrogance and transgression is based on the nature of Iblees, in which no prostration has been written. Bowing down after realizing an error or mistake, this is the essence of being human. To remain obstinate in arrogance is Ibleesiyat. 3.8 Mutual obstinacy. Though this obstinacy and transgression is fatal in every aspect of life, in the world of religion the germs are very destructive. All these corruptions and divisions, all these sectarianisms and factions, and all these differences are merely based on mutual obstinacy and transgression, otherwise when knowledge, Quran, is present, then where is the excuse for differences? But this is the Ibleesi nature which deludes by covering itself with veils of great holiness, and by making those destructive pursuits which fragment the unity of the millet appear alluring. It terms these as being service of deen. In Surah Al-Baqarah it is stated that the purpose of Allah's wahi is that it should remove differences between people, but the condition of the people is such that. But these people who differed among themselves, it was not because they were deprived of guidance and were unaware of the truth. Nay, the clear instructions of Allah's wahi were in front of them. There was no reason for mutual conflicts and differences. But even so, merely because of mutual contumacy and selfishness, they would begin to differ among themselves. 213. See also 3. 1942, 1445, 17. These are those people whose behavior is such that once they have uttered the word no from their mouths, then they will never say yes, regardless if even thousands of proofs and millions of reasons are presented to them. Such were the towns whose story we thus relate unto you. There came indeed to them their messengers with clear signs, but they would not have iman in what they had rejected before. Thus does Allah seals up the hearts of those who reject iman. The Kafirin. 7. 101. Clear reasonings are before them, the heart accepts that it is the truth, but stubbornness, intransigence and clinging on to false pride do not allow acceptance of it. But when our signs came to them, that should have opened their eyes, they said, this is sorcery manifest. And they rejected those signs in iniquity and arrogance, though their selves were convinced thereof. So see what was the end of those who acted unjustly. 27. 13-14. Just look around you, and see that in a united ummah such as the Islamic millet whose Allah is one, Rasul is one, the code of life is one, the Quran, there is one observable center, the Qibla. On what cause are so many sects and groups based? By examining it closely, this fact will become glaringly evident to you that at the bottom of this division and chaos there is nothing other than mutual obstinacy and prejudice. This is because the Quran itself is a witness that after the arrival of knowledge, i.e., knowledge of the book, differences are based merely on stubbornness. The greatest proof of the Quran being from Allah is that it contains no contradiction. Do they not reflect in the meanings of the Quran? And do they not use the vision bestowed by Allah? Had it been from other than Allah, they would surely have found therein many contradictions. Because it is in all matters completely and mutually consistent, and harmonious from the start to end. 482. 3.9 And then these sects. Then is this not a heartbreaking fact and this tale ironical that the followers of this book, whose proof that it is from Allah is that there is no contradiction in it, should be immersed to such an extent in so many differences and should declare every effort to keep these differences alive as being jihad in the path of Allah and a service to deen, even though the Quran had warned them that, and be not you among those who join gods with Allah, those who split up the deen and become divided into sects, each party rejoicing in that which is with itself. 30. 31-32. And then the condition becomes such that every sect is pleased with their own ideology and considering themselves to be on the path of haq while others are on the path of battle. They thus deceive themselves. And for the one who becomes fettered in the curse of sectarianism by fracturing the unity of the millet. As for those who divide the deen and break up into sects, you have no part in the least. Their affair is with Allah. He will in the end tell them the truth of all that they did. 6. 159. These are those displays of this very nature of Iblees which continue to circulate throughout the world shrouded in different mantles. Throughout different eras. 3.10 Protection from Iblees. Now the question is this: what should be the means of protection from the onslaught of Iblees? How should liberation be achieved from it? The monasticism of the East has come up with an easy solution for this, that if there is a pain in the head then the head should be cut off. Having become discouraged with the Ibleesi struggle, they resorted to giving up the world and withdrawing from communal life. Neither will any bamboo remain and nor will the flute play. But it is obvious that this is proof of a defeatist mentality and evidence of the weakness of the self. This is a display of extreme despondency and hopelessness which is the very aim and objective of Iblees. If this had been the divine aim that men should go and sit in caves, what need was there then for the trials and tribulations of life? In this scenario, for the evolutionary succession of life on earth, the angels were far more suited than Adam. The dogma of monasticism within mysticism is acknowledgement of the fact that, in this regard, the decision of Allah was not correct. Allah forbid. 3.10.1 Neither in monasticism. These people were, in fact, at a very superficial level. They never considered how essential the confrontation with the forces of Iblees is in the struggle of life for the emergence and evolution of the human self. This confrontation and resistance are precisely the demand of nature. Hence, the life of monasticism is an unnatural life and an invention of an ease-loving human mind. This is why the Quran has proclaimed that monastic life is not a duty decreed from the direction of Allah. This is an invention of the minds of the people themselves, and then such an invention that these people cannot even live up to it. 57.27. How can man adhere to a life which is contrary to nature? This is escapism from the struggles of life which is presented concealed within the garb of holiness. This is self-deception. 3.10.2 Nor in the materialism of the West. On the other side there is the materialism of the West, so that it has completely imposed Iblees on the system of life. The consequence of which is that hell of absence of peace and lack of contentment in which today not only Europe, but every land which even part of its system of Iblees has influenced, is suffering. And which corner of the world is there today which has managed to escape the effects of this system? Hence, this code of life does not suit humans from any aspect whatsoever. In this the challenge of Iblees has emerged before us with all of its powers, having become victorious and overpowering. This is exactly what he had avowed. He said, "Because you have thrown me out of the way, lo, I will lie in wait for them on your straight path. Then will I assault them from before them and behind them, from their right and their left. I.e., from every conceivable direction. Nor will you find, in most of them, gratitude." 7:16-17. These are the followers of Iblees about whom it was declared right there and then. Allah said, "Get out from this, disgraced and expelled. If any of them follow you, hell will I fill with you all." 7:18. See also 15, 43, 38, 85. 3.11 The third category. Now the third category remains. This is that group about which, in reply to the challenge of Iblees, it was proclaimed, "Go and employ all of your powers, execute all of your tricks, gather and assault with all of your armies from right and left, but, for over my servants no authority shall you have, except such as put themselves in the wrong and follow you. 15:42. In another verse it is stated, lead to destruction those whom you can among them, with your seductive voice. Make assaults on them with your cavalry and your infantry. Mutually share with them wealth and children, and make promises to them. But Satan promises them nothing but deceit. As for my servants, no authority shall you have over them. Enough is your Rab for a disposer of affairs. 17:64-65. In other words, Iblees will not be able to assert his influence on those people who establish society according to the laws of Allah. They will remain in control of Iblees. All the Ibleesi forces will be under their command. Knowledge, intellect, wealth, power, most people, all these things will not remain rebellious and unbridled. These will all remain functioning within those limits which have been defined by the divine laws. 3.12 Converting Iblees into a Muslim. Iblees cannot be killed. He has been given respite up to the day of judgment. He can be kept under check. In other words, he will be converted into a Muslim. So much power should be generated within oneself that it can confront the entire forces of Iblees, and then with the collective influence of this power. That kind of system should be established which is based on the divine laws. In this way, by reigning in Iblees, make him compliant. Just reflect how great and mighty will be that force, and how earth-shattering, which will bring the neck of Iblees under its feet. This force cannot be acquired by any other means except through obedience of the divine laws, and obedience of the divine laws takes place within that society which is established according to Wahi. That force within individuals which can counter the attractions of Iblees can be created within this very society. This is why when along with Adam Iblees was sent into this world, Bani Adam and his progeny were told, and if, as is sure, there comes to you guidance from me, whosoever follows my guidance, on him shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. 2:38. The children of Adam were informed, fear not, though the wherewithal of the armies of Iblees is very terrifying and intimidating. We have not left you alone, you have been armed with such a sword which the transgressing forces cannot compete with. This is that force on the basis of which a Momin can obtain prostration from even Iblees. This is that point at which, once it is reached, he can declare based on his own evidence using his intellect, how correct is this command. And he has subjected to you, as from him, all that is in the heavens and on earth. 45:13. Such a harnessing of nature in which Iblees makes man prostrate at every single step to him is not rule, but slavery. Real government is that in which all the forces of Iblees are standing with head bowed waiting to take orders, and this is only possible at that time when man enters the category of inner ibadi. Surely my devotees, devotee of Allah, and governor of the whole universe, i.e., man establishes such a society in which life is lived according to the divine laws. From this truth has also become apparent to us that no matter how universal evil may become, man has been bestowed with such a potential through which he can overcome it. Hence, all those beliefs according to which sometimes it is stated that every human child is born with sin and he cannot wash away the stain of this sin in any way whatsoever. Or that human character is defined by its inherited influences, or is established through its initial education and training, and whatever type of character is formed it cannot be changed, all these are false. There is such a force present within man by which he can overcome all these influences. But this force becomes awakened through obedience of the laws of Allah. Apart from the story of Adam, Iblees is mentioned in the Quran at another two places. First, in Surah Shu'ara, where it is stated, and the whole hosts of Iblees together. 26:95. The second is in Surah Saba, where it is stated that the people of Saba did injustice to themselves on the basis of which Allah eliminated them and left only their tails remaining. In this way Iblees' estimation of them was fulfilled. And on him did Iblis prove true his idea, and they followed him, all but a party that had Iman. 34:20. 3.13 Iblis as being from jinns. In Surah Kahf it is said about Iblis that he was from among the jinns. Behold, we said to the Malaika, bow down to Adam. They bowed down except Iblis. He was one of the jinns. 18:50. Further details about jinns will come later. At this point it is important to understand this much that 1. Each one of those forces which is invisible, cannot be seen, to human eyes is termed as jinn. And since human emotions cannot be seen by the eyes, hence these have been called jinn from this point of view. 2. And that which Iblis had said about himself, that I have been created from fire, was a pointer towards his rebellious nature. Fiery and impulsive. There is also a belief amongst us that Iblis was from among the Malaika, in fact was even their teacher. This is also false. Iblis was neither from among the Malaika, nor could he have been such. In Surah Al-Araf, where it is stated, then we bade the Malaika bow down to Adam, and they all bowed down. Not Sir Iblis. He refused to be of those who bow down. 7:11. The meaning of this is not that, apart from Iblis the other Malaika prostrated. In the Arabic language this kind of exception, illa, is called differentiated exception, which means that the thing which has been accepted e.g., we say that all the fruits have arrived, but the sweetmeat has not yet arrived. Therefore, this means that even though all the Malaika prostrated, Iblis did not prostrate. It should be clear that Iblis was also commanded to prostrate in the same way that the Malaika were. Allah said, what prevented you from bowing down when I commanded you? He said, I am better than he. You did create me from fire, and him from clay. 7:12. As has been written earlier, the Malaika and Iblis are in reality manifestations of those forces which are functioning in the spheres of the psychic and physical worlds. All of the forces of the physical universe have been placed under the subjugation of man, but there is a certain force in the psychic world, the inner world of man, which itself becomes an obstruction in the path of the evolutionary development of his own self. This is called Iblisi force. And because this force has not been created as constrained, that is why it is said about it that it refused to prostrate in front of man. The task of man now is that he should make this rebellious force bow down before him. This is the status of being human. Strength will be produced in the self of the one who does this, and growth in the eminence of his being human. Whoever becomes swamped by this force, his human potentials become destroyed. Opening parenthesis. For the remainder, how was Iblis part of the jinn? For that see the details given later about the jinn. 3.14 Iblis is the manifestation of hopelessness. Let us cast another eye on the term Iblis. From its root, Iblas, it is clear that this is the manifestation of extreme hopelessness. The greatest Iblisiate of all which man has to confront is hopelessness and despair. The reality is this, that life is the very name of hope and desire. As long as a ray of desire is present in some heart, the flame of life remains. The extinction of desires is called death. It is, in effect, the hope of remaining alive and the desire to advance forward, due to which evolution of the human self and awakening of the latent potential in man takes birth. Life is that in which there is a radiant objective in front of man, and the fervor for the attainment of this goal flows and persists in the heart and veins like an electrifying motivation. All the colors of the universe are implicit in this focus of desire. In the journey of life, wherever despondency and despair manage to impose themselves on man, death has in practical terms overcome man. The greatest trickery of Iblees is that he should impose hopelessness and despair on man. Its forces and armies, different kinds and species of Satans, continually create such reasons due to which fear becomes imposed on man, his courage dissipates, and his motivations turn cold. He becomes overwhelmed by fear and grief, and giving up heart, he abandons the challenges of life. In these dark clouds of despair, either man quietly gives up everything and sits with his head hanging between his knees in some dark and narrow corner. Or, sometimes, gripped by an intensity of desperation and anguish, he resorts to destruction, and as a consequence, that edifice of his aims which he had prepared with his blood and sweat through thousands of hardships, he destroys it with his own hands and reduces it to dust. Whether it is a head buried in rags in a corner or this kind of impulsive act, regardless, both are manifestations of the intensity of hopelessness and feelings of desperation. This becomes that moment in time when Iblees, having succeeded in his objective, mocks man. In this darkness of despair, if any ray of hope can become visible, it is the illuminating flame of Iman, which writes on these frightening and dark clouds in glittering words, that "So lose not heart and do not despair. You are eminent and superior over all others if you are Mominin." 3. 139. Iman means to have a strong conviction in the truth of one's own aim. And a Momin is the one who does not allow even the greatest difficulty in the world to create the slightest tremor in his conviction. In the light of Iman, this was that very same glowing flame which was promised to Adam when he was told to go into the world and confront the trickeries of Iblees with full force. Remember, you are not alone. And if, as is sure, there comes to you guidance from me, whosoever follows my guidance, on him shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. 2:38. 3.15 Its cure. Fear of the forces and armies of Iblees and grief from the death of one's own hopes are both an effect of the weakness of Iman and a manifestation of the feebleness of the self. The natural consequence of Iman is that fear and grief should never come anywhere close. This is that state about which Iblees was told to go and put in all your efforts and then see. As for my servants, no authority shall you have over them. Enough is your Rabb for a disposer of affairs. 17:65. Just bring to mind that time when hordes of opposition are encircling from every side. Abandoning home and hearth, they are sitting hiding in a dark cave inside a wild mountain range. The clattering of the hooves of the horses giving chase is reaching the ears. The enemy, armed with all the wherewithal for killing, is approaching ever closer. They are within the reach of the enemy without any resources whatsoever. And it seems as if there are no means for protection and no way to defend themselves, as if the whole army of Iblees with all its might is raging towards them like a stormy banshee. One friend perceives some signs of apprehension on the face of another. This apprehension of his is not for his own sake. Rather it is for the sake of that eminent and esteemed being who is dearer than all the things in the world, in this environment. With the full forces of Iman, and holding a world of alive hopes and dynamic desires, this life-giving voice is heard from the heart at peace with itself of this compassionate companion. Have no anxiety, for Allah is with us. 9:40. This is that status of abdet, devotee, which has been referred to in the above verse and in which man can never be overcome by Iblees. On the other side, ponder on the transgression of Iblees. From the way in which this narrative is quoted in the Quran, it is clearly visible how much pride Iblees has in this control and power of his. Then reflect what great powers man has been made master of. whose purpose of life is this, that in every department of life, in the campaign of every struggle in his life, he should defeat every force of Iblees in such a way that his Iblees's bones begin to crumble. But these powers awaken only through Iman and righteous deeds. Those deeds which create this ability in him, that even if the greatest Ibleesi force in the world appears before him, when he raises his hand on him gazing steadfastly into his eyes, a tremor should engulf Iblees, his heart shudders with fear. He should not have the courage to step forward, and leaving the battlefield, he should run about hiding his face in the caves within the mountains. This is the stature of a Momin man in comparison with Iblees. 3.16 Iblees and us. But can the Muslim of today also be a claimant of this status? That Muslim whose position is this, that he bows down before the tiniest of pharaonic forces. At the thought of the power of Iblees, his soul trembles. The system of Iblees is overwhelming the whole world with its full supremacy and authority, and he, the Muslim, is continuing to live his life under this with great contentment. The Quran had declared that when there is a confrontation with Iblees, then immediately bring yourself within the support and help of Allah, which is achieved through obedience of his laws. But today protection has become confined to the repetition of merely these words, I seek the protection of Allah against condemned Satan. The consequence being that today Iblees has no need to make any effort, we leap forth willingly ourselves in order to fall into his trap. We cannot counter even the slightest of deception in the attraction and lure of Iblees, or confront even the feeblest of perceived threat and fear from him. Never mind reject the onslaught of his forces with mocking laughter. It is actually a demand of the pharaonic forces of Iblees that some moment should come with hands of iron to confront it, by wrestling with whom he will also gain pleasure from the fight. What thrill can he derive from a tug of war with these figures of clay? But where can such a man who is a devotee of Haqq be found today? These kind of self-aware men, devotees of Allah, can only take birth in that society which is shaped according to the divine laws, and today such a society does not exist anywhere in even the tiniest of corners on this vast and wide earth. This is why today it is the system of Iblees which has imposed itself on the whole world, i.e., that system in which the human intellect has become reduced to the status of a concubine of the human emotions, and the purpose of life has been reduced to the gratification of these hedonistic desires. Nowhere in this world does even the name of humanity and its eminence exist. This is why there is no respect for humanity anywhere in the world. But despite this, there is no cause for us to be hopeless, because the technique to overcome Iblees was disclosed, i.e., obedience of Allah's wahi, and the wahi of Allah is present with us in its original form. Whenever we desire, we can shape such a society in which these laws of Allah are implemented on a practical basis. This very society would be the answer to the challenge of Iblees, and will be the cure for our dashed hopes. What the mutual link between Iblees and Shaitan is will be explained in the topic on Shaitan.